During the Civil War, she served in the 1st South Carolina Volunteers. This was the first Black infantry regiment in the U.S. Army, which later became the 33rd U.S. Colored Troops Infantry Regiment. Having escaped to freedom herself, she helped to elevate other enslaved humans to secure their freedom. Welcome to the channel. I'm Colette Elizabeth, and in this episode of Teach Our Own History, we're going to discuss Susie King Taylor. Susie Baker was born into slavery in the deep U.S. South near Savannah, Georgia in 1848. Though it was illegal for enslaved people to be educated under Georgia law, Susie's grandmother ensured that she and her brother learned to read and received an education through an underground education. Her underground education included attending 2 secret schools taught by freed Black women. At about 14 years old, Susie became free when her uncle led her out to a federal gunboat plying the waters near Confederate-held Fort Pulaski. I want to say right around that time, the U.S. Civil War was breaking out. So it wasn't uncommon for enslaved individuals to do what they needed to do in order to secure their freedom. Because of her ability to read and write, when they got to Fort Pulaski, Susie was asked to teach the newly freed Black children. So at about 13 or 14, Susie became the first African American known to teach at a freedmen's school in Georgia. Some references also say that she actually founded the freedmen's school where she taught. She taught children during the day and adults during the evening. This was located in or on St. Simon's Island, Georgia. Around 1862, when Susie joined the 1st Black Infantry Regiment in the U.S. Army, officially as a laundress, she actually worked as a caretaker and a nurse. And in fact, according to the Library of Congress documents titled Susie King Taylor, an African American nurse and teacher in the Civil War, Susie is known as the first African American Army nurse. During her service in the Civil War, Susie married Sergeant Edward King. Together, the two of them expanded education by teaching Black soldiers how to read and write. In 1866, after the Civil War, the Kings moved to Savannah, Georgia. She had hoped to continue her teaching career and opened a private school for children of freemen. Unfortunately, her husband died the same year. You see, even though he was a well-trained carpenter, he had a difficult time getting employment because of discrimination, so he had to work on the docks, and due to an accident, he died. And then eventually, Susie had to close her schools because a public school opening caused her private school to fail. In 1879, Susie married Russell Taylor. And then in 1902, Susie published Reminiscences of My Life in Camp, a Civil War memoir told from the singular perspective of an African American woman. This made her the only African American woman to publish a memoir of her wartime experiences at that time. Susie devoted much of the rest of her life to the work with Women's Relief Corps, a national organization for female Civil War veterans. She died in 1912. One of the things that I learned and loved about Susie King is that her history as an educator fueled her activism as she challenged the Union Daughters of the Confederacy in their campaign to rid slavery from school curriculums. Does that sound familiar to you? Okay, So this was happening way back then. Folks was trying to rewrite history. Okay, way back then. It's been going on. This is nothing new. So 111 years after her death, I wonder if Susie King Taylor thought that we would still be fighting for the real history of slavery in the United States to be told. I'm just wondering. I'm just wondering. Okay. I enjoyed learning about this woman who was involved in the Civil War, who contributed to the Civil War. It really made me feel proud. It made me feel empowered because what it showed me, and I've known, I've seen it, but it just kind of reiterates how we as Black women, despite what we are dealing with, we try to do the best we can to make things better, not only for us, but for others. And while this was just an overview of Susie's life, I encourage you to do a more in depth research about her and other African American women in history, as well as African American men, of course. But I just thought that her story was fascinating because this woman, I had never heard of her before my research, and this woman contributed so much. Think about it. She was fighting for freedom. And then after freedom, she was fighting for the story about us being enslaved and fighting for freedom to be included in US history. So, again, I encourage you to look at her story, to research her story for yourselves. As I said in the prior episode, it's our responsibility to teach our own history. I challenge you to teach your children, your grandchildren, the neighborhood children, your real nieces, your play nephews, our history. Until the next time, like, share, subscribe, and comment. And thank you for watching.